Am I the asshole for telling my apartment complex to tow the car anyway? Hi Reddit, so I live in an apartment complex and park in their underground ramp that is pretty full, with no extra spots, and in which I pay for an assigned specific spot $175 a month. On Friday evening I came home from work kind of late and found someone parked in my spot. I tried getting a hold of after-hours management to see if I could park elsewhere or see if the other car could be towed, but couldn't get a hold of anyone, so I ended up paying for overnight street parking. The next day, Saturday, I go to move my car and the same car is still in my spot. I go to the management office and tell them the car needs to be towed. They tell me they have to give an hour notice to tow? Seemed sus, and that they'd put a notice on and then tow. In the meantime they said I could use the ramp's handicap spot, which I wasn't super comfy doing. I go down to move my car a few hours later and lo and behold the car isn't towed, and I again can't get a hold of after-hours management. The office staff had left at this point. Finally today I go down and the car is still there. I am furious at this point and go to the office and say the car needs to be towed immediately. Manager says he'll take care of it, but a few hours later the car still isn't towed. I complain and the manager says he learned the car belonged to a tenant's family member who was in town for a family emergency and had parked there inadvertently, and that they'd be home tonight to move the car and I could stay in the handicap spot till then. I explain I am sorry that the tenant is having an emergency but that I pay for the spot, haven't been able to use it all weekend, and that I don't like taking up a handicap spot from someone that needs it and need to run errands and don't want to come home to somebody potentially in the handicap spot and have to street park again. Manager implies I am a jerk and says he want tow, so I say I will complain to upper management. So am I the asshole for wanting this person with an emergency to be towed from my assigned spot? ETA, small update, person is still in my spot. I told management I'd just call the tow company myself but they wouldn't tell me the name of who we were contracted with. I tried to find the name but it wasn't on any signs or in my lease paperwork, so I tried calling around and no companies I called would come. Will update again tomorrow. NTA. As someone in a wheelchair, I am very annoyed that anyone would suggest taking the handicap parking. I also agree with the other points people have said. Not the asshole, the manager could be lying and technically they could have the vehicle towed to the handicap spot. You pay for your spot. Edit, since I triggered someone, I need to specify I don't think it should be moved into the handicap spot. I said it because that's where management kept telling op to park. I get pissed when randoms park in those spots too. Info, have you asked the manager if you can get a refund on parking plus remove the cost of street parking from your rent for the month? That seems like a reasonable compromise, especially if they do move the car tonight. Edit to not the asshole. Not the asshole. This tenant has stolen your parking spot and management has failed to act. Definitely complain. Demand reimbursement for overnight parking as well as being inconvenienced. Even if the other tenant's family member is there for an emergency they can still take a few minutes and move their car. Not the asshole. WTH is wrong with your manager? If he doesn't want to tow the car, then why doesn't he offer to pay for your street parking? Also, it feels like, even on private property, a building manager cannot just tell a person whose vehicle doesn't have a placard or handicapped license plate that they can park in a handicap spot. I could definitely be wrong, I'm certainly neither a lawyer nor an AITA assuming you're in the US expert, but it just seems wrong to be like, oh, it's perfectly okay, non-handicapped tenant. Go ahead and park in the handicap reserve spot. Not the asshole. One night, okay sure, family emergency, the owner of the car, didn't know, I get it, but the next day after informing management should have called that tenant and told them that the car needs to be moved. Bill management for the cost of parking in the street. And you are correct, by parking in a handicapped spot, you're taking potential spots away from someone who might need it more. And you could get fined for it too. Not the asshole at all. You're paying for a parking spot that you can't use. The landlord is in violation of the contract you signed to gain access to the parking spot. The manager has no business giving the parking spot away and ought to have other slots reserved for guests in the area. Not the asshole. The handicap spot is not for overflow and your manager is an asshole for treating it like one. Also, damn paying for tenant parking and paying for street parking. That's BS. Call the tow man. NTA. I'd go over his head and call a tow company myself for an abandoned car that needs a tow at the owner's expense parked illegally. They will come and tie for you and charge the guy. When you park in a spot you need to be aware and ask the apartment owner if it's okay or if it belongs to someone. Dude had been there all weekend. After 72 hours if being illegally parked you are in the clear to call the tow truck yourself. Is it possible the manager is trying to cover for the tenant whose relatives steal your space? The reason I ask is he knew the first night that this person that took your spot was there for an emergency. Which means the tenant must have informed him. The first thing he should have done when you made a complaint is contact that tenant and tell them to park their own damn car on the street. He didn't do that. I wonder why? Absolutely let higher-ups know. Not the asshole let the visiting family member park in the handicap spot then. Not the asshole, and go to upper management as your building manager is not doing their job. Not the asshole you pay for the spot they were warned. Not the asshole. I would contact the manager's superior and complain. You pay $175 for an assigned spot, they collect a few, you get a spot. The fact he said to park in the handicap spot is ridiculous. They are there for people who need them, not overflow parking. I would ask that your overnight fees and a portion of your parking rent be waived this month. Not the asshole. Even assuming the manager is telling the truth, you paid for that spot and have been denied access for days and you're also being denied reimbursement? Make whatever complaints you need to emo. $175 a month, to have an assigned little rectangle of concrete. No, you're not the asshole for wanting to be able to use what you pay $175 a month to use. Also, another way to think of it, $175 per mo based on the 30-day cycle being the norm for a monthly subscription is $5.83 per day, that you're paying the complex you already live in and pay rent to use parking. Your manager, because he thinks you using what you pay $5.83 a day for makes you a jerk, has essentially decided to rip you off nearly $20 for the sake of a stranger, who by standard policy shouldn't even be in that lot in the first place, much less for several days. Not the asshole. Since the management office knows whose car it is, they could have informed the tenant or car's owner that they need to move their car to street parking or offer them the handicap spot by a certain time before towing the car. Their inaction made the situation worse than it needed to be. Not the asshole. Even if you have permission, it is illegal to park in a handicap spot without a placard. You will have your car towed and get a ticket. Just park behind the other car blocking it in and complain to upper management and request the parking fee be waived for the month and ask them to tow. Not the asshole. Why are you paying for a parking space when you're not using it? That's what it boils down to. Not the asshole. Your frustration is understandable and apartment management should have explained their decision not to tow the car much sooner, instead of leaving you to wonder why your space was still occupied. Instead of towing the other car, the apartment manager could ask the owner to move to the handicapped spot or make other parking arrangements. If they're not willing to make that request, they should prorate your parking fee for this month. Not the asshole. Your spot was taken and you had to pay extra fees to park elsewhere. Please post an update and let us know what happens. Not the asshole. And telling you to park in the handicap spot is sketchy AF. Not the asshole. And I would speak to the upper management about the car being in your spot for multiple days without moving and the refuse of the on-site manager to rectify the situation. Also, I would calculate the price per day you should not pay since you did not get full use of the spot and demand a refund of that amount to the upper management. Not the asshole. Send them an email along the lines of, Dear XXXXX. I wanted to send you an email before I got in touch with a lawyer to confirm the following two things. 1. You are refusing to grant me access to the parking spot I pay $175 per month for. 2. You requested that I park in a handicap spot despite not being handicapped myself, thus denying that spot to somebody with a handicap. I suspect the offending vehicle will be gone in no time. Not the asshole. Emergency can happen. But if you use a parking spot someone else pays for, you're responsible and have to move it as soon as possible. You should have someone move it for you or expect to be towed. I would also complain about the manager. Not the asshole. You should demand compensation for not only the street parking you had to pay for, but also a concession on next month's parking fees. You were paying for it, but were unable to use it due to no fault of your own. Find the daily cost of parking for the month in question, and tell them to credit your next month's parking fee for that amount. The manager straight up told you that he would take care of it multiple times, when in fact he hadn't even looked into it. He may not have been the cause of the issue, but you brought it to his attention, and he failed to act on it for several days. That's not your fault. Why pay for the spot if they won't give it to you? Tell them to refund your money then. That emergency story is shaky. How did he know that? Sounds like a convenient excuse. Not the asshole. One night sure, but I'd want the car towed too after 3 days. If the manager knows that family emergency story, the manager knows which apartment the car belongs with and how to contact the driver. The manager fell down on the job. You could pursue some free parking with the real management. Not the asshole. It's your spot. The end. Few simple rules in life. 1. If you don't want to change your airline, bus, train seat, you don't have to. 2. Just because someone only has 2 items and you have 13 doesn't mean they're entitled to cut in front of you. 3. Just because you have kids, are old, or anything else doesn't mean you get extra perks. Now, all of these are things that you should be nice about. After all, we live in a society. However, they are not mandatory, and in this case management could have reached out to the family to let them know that it was causing issues so they could rectify it. Final point, don't park in handicap spots if you're not handicapped. That was a stupid recommend from management. NTA and go over his head. I feel like he might be lying. Why put his work in jeopardy from a tenant for something like that? Good on you for feeling wrong about taking that spot, you're right. He's super Seuss. Not the asshole. It's outrageous that handicap spots are being treated as overspill parking. In fact, they are a lifeline to many of those who need them. They cannot park anywhere else and are completely stuck, often literally, if there is no space available. I don't think you lacked empathy because of the time the car was parked there. There is a lack of empathy for the needs of people who rely on handicap bays though. MGT should have brokered a better solution, not have left it to you to be made to feel the asshole. Why couldn't the family member return to move the car? I saw a video once of this car being parked constantly in someone else's spot, and the spot owner got some sort of moving trolleys that fit under each wheel and they were able to wheel it out without damage. They put it in a place where it was impossible for them to get it out, but if you can find these things from a mechanic, you can move that car to the handicapped spot that the manager is so graciously giving out. And given that I am a disabled person, this is how pissed off that I am that this has been allowed go on. Check your lease and get legal advice on your rights. Not the asshole. You pay a lot of money for that spot. If they were that concerned, they could have told the owner of the car that they can use the handicapped spot so you can have your spot back. Not the asshole. That sounds really shady. The manager's protecting whomever's parking there for some reason. Not the asshole. I agree with what everyone else has said already. Management won't like this, but you might in the future just put a couple orange cones in your spot while you are out and about. That way someone has to actually physically move the cones to park there. Not the asshole. Does the lot have tow signs that list the name or number of the tow company? If so, call the tow company directly and have the car towed. If the family member story is true, the tenant knew where their family member could park and should have instructed them. But there's a good chance the story isn't true. Also, complain higher and higher. Not the asshole. You should threaten them with breach of lease. They specified violators will be towed but have not followed through on their policy. Also make them pay for your parking since they were unavailable to provide services promised in your rental agreement. If it was such a family emergency, why isn't the car at the hospital taking up a parking space? Not the asshole. You have not been able to use the spot you pay for. I would be deducting the amount you paid for from next month's parking fee and tell management to collect from the person who used your space. It's incredibly shitty that they recommended to use the handicapped spot. You should absolutely pursue compensation. Not the asshole. As an office manager in an apartment complex, I hate towing people as I know it's a huge inconvenience, but it's been going on for days. Now I probably would have asked if you'd be okay waiting a day and comp you your money or something. To be fair to them about having to give them 1 hour notice, they may have to. Legally we can't tow for 24 hours unless it's an emergency situation like being unsafe, such as up on a jack unsupervised. Not the asshole. If they parked there because of an emergency, they should have left a note for you with an call back number so you could call them and figure something out. Staying there for days is not okay. They could have moved, found other parking, had someone else move their car, let management know to let you know, left a note for you, etc. It's on them. FFS, I would tie a rope to it and tow it myself. Not the asshole. I would literally hitch the car and tow it to a spot where everyone would complain, but I could get out. Like in the middle of the parking area. Make them tow it. But maybe I'm just triggered because I live in a hella popular area with bars and people will park in my 2 spots that are in front of my home. I don't tow them, but I do put massive stickers with a note on their front window which takes them an hour to peel off. I have a lot of Nest doorbell videos with mad people. I think it depends on how many handicapped spots there were. If there were a whole bunch of them not being used, then you could comfortably use one knowing you won't be taking away from a disabled person. But if there was only 1 or 2 available, then yeah, I'd say you were in the right. Not the asshole, tow this guy. Not the asshole, nope, I would be filing a complaint to the upper management. You pay for that parking spot, it is yours. Info, is the parking just for the apartment block? If it is and all the spots are designated, then the handicapped one might be part of the designated spots and management no, it's not in use. I'm disabled and would usually be very against parking in a handicapped spot, but if this is the case and you're not taking it from someone in need, then it should be okay. Not the asshole, inform upper management about everything and let them know that you want an reimbursement for the days you couldn't use your spot plus the night you had to park on the street. Forward everything that the lower management told you. Not the asshole, I would have called the tow myself because absolutely not.